What's going on, guys? I hope you're having a great week so far. On today's episode, I spoke to the one and only Timmy P, a legend in the underground house scene. He's got releases on Local Talk, Strictly Rhythm, Moxy, Inamu, Flash Mob, Origins, Nervous. If I go on, we'll be here until Christmas, trust me. So Tim dedicated a lot of time to us today, where we spoke about his beginnings in music, how his upbringing in Oxford influenced his early experiences going out to raves, to parties, going to Fabric in London for the first time. He told us how his music and his workflow evolved over the years, what challenges he faced in the industry, how his life changed when he became a dad, and what his day-to-day looks like. We also talked about his coaching platform, Super Serious Coaching, where he not only gave us a lot of insight into how it works, but also a very counterintuitive advice on how to kickstart your career as an artist. Thank you again for joining the podcast. Let's do it. Let's dive in.
Yeah, doing well, thank you, mate. Doing well. I've just been for a run, so I'm currently just sort of trying to settle myself back into working for the afternoon now.
Settle
So it's
down
been
again.
exactly,
Nice.
exactly. Yeah, how about you?
I'm
How's things?
very good, man. Doing a lot of things.
Hmm.
Getting back into the podcasting right now.
Nice, amazing.
Just because, well, first of all, it's content, isn't it? And
Yeah, yeah,
second,
yeah.
I just love talking to people and artists from the industry and all that. And
Mm.
I just love also getting to know the person behind the
Hmm.
music.
Hmm.
So, sorry. So yeah, it's very interesting to me to actually know the human behind the art,
Of
so to say.
course. Yeah,
So yeah, man,
yeah.
I really appreciate that you took your time because I know that you're super busy. You have you have your work, right? You have music. You have super
Yeah,
serious the
yeah.
coaching. You have a family as well. So
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
do you actually get
Thank
any
you, mate.
sleep?
Uh, yeah, thanks, bro. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to speak to you. God, my phone's going off. So yeah, my life is definitely quite busy at the moment. But I genuinely wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think. For
Mhm.
me, um, I'm so lucky to have such an incredibly supportive wife who really helps me to, run things like Super Serious and alongside my day job and help with the childcare and things like that. Um, so it's a proper team, we're a proper team with the whole thing. Joe's amazing. She does a lot of the sort of the admin side of Super Serious and the bookings and things like that,
Mhm.
as well as being an incredible mum. So I think the reason that I managed to cope is definitely because of the team I have around me. And when I say team, I mean her. And also just the guys that I work with at Super Serious,
Mhm.
Danny and Ryan and Gert and Ben. I'm so fortunate to have those guys because they help take the pressure off sometimes. So I do get sleep, and it's because of the people that I'm working with really to help me get to this point. So yeah, life's busy, but I wouldn't have it any other way, really, mate. I really enjoy. I'm not very good at doing nothing. I find myself starting to overthink and get a bit a bit nervous.
You
So I
cannot
like to
sit
focus
down.
on things. No, no,
Do you
exactly,
meditate at
exactly that.
all, or?
Do you know what? It's something I have really wanted to do in my life. I really want to sort of. I love cold showers. I love exercising. But meditation is something I've tried at times, but always been a bit like, am I doing this right? Is this working? Um, why am I constantly thinking about stuff when I shouldn't be thinking about stuff, etc. So I just sort of feel like I'm not doing it right, and I don't really. I need guidance. So no is the answer. Not at the moment. I have tried. I have tried. How about you? Do you meditate?
I try occasionally, well, I try to
Mm.
frequently do it, but I think what you're talking about is like managing the entrepreneurial mind versus the artist mind. So I don't think you get
Yes.
any
Yeah.
quiet in your head.
No. No.
So yeah.
No.
By the way, can you hear the sound from outside? Because someone is cutting the grass
There's some
and
build. There's definitely some building. Is my mic okay as well? Because that was
yeah,
another
yeah,
thing I
your
was going
mic
to
is
ask. Yeah.
perfect. Let me just quickly
Okay.
close the window. Just a
Okay,
second.
mate.
Okay,
Cool.
just
Yeah. That sounds better.
a little quieter, just a bit.
Cool. Yeah. Perfect,
Yeah.
mate. Sounds good.
So, I mean, I was just looking over your discography, which is
Hmm.
unreal. Like, I actually had no
Yeah.
idea. Like, I had to go a bit back in time because, and
Hmm.
actually, very funnily, I found a song that you made with Stefano Esposito a long time ago, and I
Hmm.
remember that on my first gig I played that song, like my
Oh,
first
no
ever
way.
gig. Yeah,
No
I
way.
remember playing it. Yeah, and I was
Oh,
like,
mate,
what is the coincidence? Yeah,
Stefano is one of the greats in my opinion. He was, so this must be going back 10 years plus slightly. Bef
2015, 14, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about that, because he came to the UK and stayed with me for a weekend, and
Okay.
we just spent some time producing together. But he's just he was so ahead of his time, like just in terms of groove and style. But then went on to pastures new slightly. But yeah, I still see Stefano as like one of the greats when it comes to production. Just love his style. I love like the swing that he put in his tracks was just
Mhm.
unrivaled. So yeah, what a producer. But yeah, mate, I've definitely been around the block a little bit. I've done a lot of EPs over the years, some absolutely horrendous that I've forgotten about and just etched out of my brain. But some tracks I'm proud of, definitely, and still hold a place in my heart on this journey, if you want to call it like
Mhm.
call it that. So yeah, so definitely been producing for a long time.
When did your journey start? Like, what's the
Um,
first memory you have of like getting into music, being a producer,
hmm.
DJ?
Well, my dad used to. Well, my mum and my dad have both been were both very musical. So in terms of not necessarily playing, but just we just had music on all the time at home. So for me, I just loved it from a young age, and I realised the emotional attachment between songs in terms of like locations, memories, making you feel good, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was such a prominent thing when I was a kid, and really saw the connection between feeling and music and stuff. And so I for me, it was so important to have it in my life, and uh, I've got this amazing fond mem. My dad sadly passed away when I was quite young, but I have this amazing memory of me and my brother both being quite young in our like car seats in the back, and there was a song by Safro Duo which is like it's pretty old I think now, quite commercial, but he just when he was driving he just turned it up so unhealthily loud, like it was so loud in the car, and me and my brother were just like we were just sort of just dancing in the back, but we must have been about seven or something, 6 or 7, and it's such a fond memory that sticks in my head. How it made me feel at the time, I just felt so like happy, and it was a moment that's just etched into my head now.
Are you talking
Um,
about the wait,
you'll know it. You'll know it.
yes, wait, what is it called? Something live. Play
It's
played
yeah.
played live,
Hey
like
oh
something like that?
that
Ah,
one.
yes,
Do you know the
yes.
one?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I think I was thinking
so
of another one, but this one, yeah, I definitely remember that one. I mean, I must
I
have been like
just
3 or something.
I mean, it was such a classic at the time. But my dad also was a Jean Jarre fan, so I used to love that kind of stuff, like Oxygen and things like that. Then, we, oh,
I think I lost you there for a second. So sorry, if you could just repeat what you said. You
also,
were talking.
so yeah, just going back to yeah, my dad was a huge fan of Jean Jarre, and my mum was. So, we used to have Oxygen in the house all the time, the album, and I just used to love listening to it. Like it was always on in the background. So my earliest memories were definitely inspired by my parents, just constantly having music on at home, and I think as well. Um, I just really wanted. I used to play the piano a lot when I was a child, so I used to hate it though. I used to absolutely hate it with a passion. But I
How
still
come, if I may
realised
ask?
I couldn't be asked to practice at all. I just
Okay.
hated the idea of practicing. I really struggled with the discipline of like, oh, you've got to go and practice for half an hour, and I just hated it. But then I realised that when I played, I felt like it felt good to it just felt nice to make music, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. So as technology grew, because this was the time when music the sort of doors and things like Ableton and stuff were just quite basic and limited, and you didn't really have resources on YouTube and stuff at this point. So it was literally a grab the software and just see how you get on sort of attitude. But then as I sort of got older, I was like, I just want to keep, I just want to learn how to do this, and I started attending parties and going to raves with my friends, like drum and bass nights and things. I mean, it started very like drum and bassy, and then it went a bit housey. It went, I used to love Deadmau5 as an example
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
growing up, and but then Carl Cox said, didn't he, that EDM is a gateway into house music, and I think probably back then, I drum and bass for me was that gateway, or like at least sort of cheesy Deadmau5y kind of stuff. But that was definitely going back quite a long time now. I'm talking early Deadmau5, like 2000. I can't even remember the years, but anyway, yeah. So that was my pathway into all of it, and then
And
grabbed Cubase, and that was it.
you grew up in the UK in what sort of area? Because you said you started going to raves and parties. Just
So
wondering
I
where.
live,
Like,
yeah. So I lived in Oxford, which
mhm.
is by no means a a dance music hub, or like electronic music hub when it comes to it's incredible for bands. Like Oxford as a city is like, it's the home of Radiohead and things like that. It's like a really incredible city for when it comes to bands, but when it comes to electronic music, there were two or three parties there that or maybe even less that stood out, but generally it didn't do particularly well. So Oxford was home, but I used to go to London a lot. So I was often travelling up to London, going to Fabric all the time. My first ever Fabric experience was mind blowing. I saw Fish Go Deep there, and just came away just completely blown away by the whole thing. And I was like, I just want this to be part of my life. To be honest, I really enjoyed the feeling of walking down the stairs in Fabric, and
Yeah,
just sort of it
yeah.
just being so insanely loud. And obviously been to parties before that, but that was just something really special. And just, yeah, I loved it. Just loved it from that day, really.
Was there any specific influences, artists, or genres in the beginning of your, let's say, production journey
Sure.
that you were like obsessed about? Like I want to make
Hmm.
this kind of music.
Originally, I was hugely into Steve Lawler and the Viva sound.
Yeah.
I started off being a massive Viva fan, and especially Steve Lawler. I really enjoy, and even that was when Darius and Naira were together, and Darius Orosin and Naira together. So I really enjoyed that, like techier house, the tech house that we know. We don't really know it anymore. It's not tech
From
house
like
like
the
it
late
is
2000s, sort of like,
uh,
no, actually
early tech
early,
house,
mid.
early noughties, yeah. So I'd say early 2000s. So I space terracey, space terracey kind of stuff, or like when it was outdoors. Just that kind of, yeah, just that like Houseworks, people like him. I used to love that sound to bits, but obviously hugely into Kerry Chandler at the time. Who isn't really? I mean, I think everyone is, but I really enjoyed the classic sounds that he was making. That's how me and Stefano started talking, and because Stefano made more of a classic sound. So, but back then I was scattergun producing, but I was kind of making everything really. But Steve Lawler was a huge influence on me growing up. Definitely, loved his music. Absolutely loved all of the Viva stuff, and Cécille, funnily enough, who I know now quite well, the guys there, but they would. I just remember all the early Butch releases and stuff, and things like that, and it was just like, this is just unbelievable music. Nick Curley and co. So yeah, that sort of European tech house was just for me what was unreal.
Your first release, or the first EP, I just checked earlier. Well, on Spotify it says that it was in 2011. Is that does that check? Okay. How?
Uh, it might even be earlier than that, actually. There was one that there might have been a few that never made it onto Spotify. Can you remember what the artwork was? Was it Manchester Underground Music? Do you remember if it was that?
I can tell you right now. One second, because I still had it open. But Spotify just went all the way up. One moment.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I think it might well have been. But
Yeah, yeah. Manchester Underground Music, 2011.
yeah,
Pop
so that
EP.
was, oh man, yeah, that was my first release. And that came about through just lots of cold emailing. Like it
Yeah.
was it was lots of just because back then we didn't really have socials at all. Facebook was a core part of networking and SoundCloud and stuff like that. So that release just came through me scouting Beatport. and trying to find labels that, anyone that would take it at that point. That's what it felt like. It was just sort of just please sign my music and we'll see what happens. So,
And
so yeah.
how would you say over the years has your sound evolved, or like
Mm.
maybe even your production style? Because one thing is like your
Mm.
sound, and the other thing is like how you make the music.
So I've always been a real fan of swing, groove, jacking drums. I love the real old Rob Soley kind of sound. I love the feeling of like swingy groove, and so for me, I've always been a huge fan of trying to make that sort of style. Proper snare roll, snare fills. Love classic vocals, diva-y sort of vocals, and very organic stabs and things. And that's something I've always loved and tried to recreate. I do think my style has moved a little bit, sort of almost a bit snaky. I've gone a bit. Dipped into minimal a bit. I did some stuff with Piv, and then sort of came back to house again, and then did stuff on Moxy, and I've sort of done it. Strictly Rhythm as well. Made some real classic stuff for Strictly. So I've just done all sorts. I've sort of yeah, been around the block a little bit when it comes to releases.
You're dropping basically
Um,
all my favorite record labels right now.
yeah, yeah. I've been so fortunate. Do you know what? The Strictly release was incredibly fortunate, and that was a link up from Greco and Madvilla because they released just before me, and they introduced me to Kenny Dope and Phil Cheeseman via email, and then just me and Phil, who was the A&R at Strictly, then just built this amazing relationship. And he was such a legend. But it sadly, they were sold to BMG, I think, maybe a year after my release, or just under that. So then Strictly it stopped signing artists, or new artists at least.
They
That's
just
the impression
sell
I've. They just
catalogs
sell the old
basically.
catalog, back
Mhm.
catalog. So I can't believe it really, but I just sort of managed to sneak in at the last second with a release there really. So I'm incredibly grateful that happened. So big shout out to Greco and Madvilla, who at the time, yeah,
I
they
remember
they helped.
that release as well, as a sort of like part of my journey when I started like having my first like residency. That was when I was
Mm,
still in Switzerland, and I
hmm
remember because like I think I tagged a friend on SoundCloud underneath your snippet. You know when you used to like share like
mm,
snippets of your release,
hmm
and I remember commenting something, and it was in German, and then basically my friend didn't reply, and then you commented underneath and you were saying like, what does that mean? And I was like,
Yeah,
just that it's a
almost
great
certainly. Yeah.
effing record. And that's the
Oh,
first time
thanks,
we
mate.
actually talked, but like that was, yeah, that was
Years ago.
also like,
I was probably super paranoid about it because that SoundCloud was such a that was when you released a track or did a snippet or a teaser, that was it. It was like a 1 minute 30 SoundCloud link, and then you just anxiously hit refresh and wait for comments or likes and stuff, and then suddenly you might get like Detroit Swindle or Damn Swindle or someone like that just like your post, and you're like, fuck yes, this is huge. And then that was like the endorphins and the buzz. Whereas now it's Instagram where you're just like, oh yeah, likes,
yeah, yeah,
it's got a message.
all the
It's
likes.
it's just yeah. SoundCloud was my everything back then, and my community with like Casper and Deslu Voss and all of those amazing guys who made it just felt like a real nice homely kind of place to be. SoundCloud. Now it's a very different beast that we all know about.
I want to catch up a bit on your workflow today. What would you
Yeah.
say is your typical workflow now when you create new music, like from start to
Sure.
finish? If you could give us like a raw like breakdown.
hmm So I've got a template which I think is incredibly important for producers. Having a template with your favorite sounds in it, which can help you just get grooves going really quickly. I think that's really important. So, I've got drum racks full of my favorite snares and claps and kicks and hats and stuff, so I can just get started really quickly on my push and just get a groove going. So what I tend to do is just get the foundation down. So I'll get the kick done, I'll get the clap done, and I'll get some hats down. Then I'll try and find that special something. So I've got to
The
find
hook,
the
basically.
theme, the hook, the theme, the story, like the whatever that is, whether it's a bass, a really interesting bass or a really interesting vocal or a call and response vocal or a really exciting melody. I try and find that thing, and I don't move on until I found that thing. And I also try and make sure that my in Ableton, I'm working within a 32-64 bar loop maximum, and up to 32 bars will be a breakdown, and then 32 to 64 will be the drop. So I'm just always building into a drop the whole time. And I fill that out. I fill that space out as much as I possibly can with content, even if it's too much, which quite often it is. Quite often it will be too much detail, and I'll strip back elements, and then. But the beauty is, too much is better than not enough. So what I'll then do is then just go and delete things that aren't working for me, and do it that way. So it's very much building like that. So just not moving to the arrangement until that is full. That has to be full. Otherwise, it's so hard. We've all been there where we're arranging and we're like, I don't. This is too loopy. This isn't working.
And is that a process that takes over like multiple days where you just leave it, you come back to it, or is it something that you do like, okay, you sit down one day and you have it ready at the end of the day, and then on another day you start arranging?
So because I've been doing this for such a long time now, I have quite a strict process with myself where I will, if I really think an idea has legs, I will try and bash it out as quickly as I can. So I will sit down in the morning and I'll spend a couple of hours on it, and I'll try and get it as far as I can. So get the idea filled. Then the next day, my acid test is always the next day. If I listen to it the next day and I like it, then that for me is a green flag, and I'll go for it and I'll get it finished. But if I listen to it and I don't like it the next day, I'll bin it off. It's just that, literally, I'll just delete the project and start again, or
Oh,
take maybe bits from it. But I am quite ruthless now because my time is very limited with everything that's going on. I can't waste time on projects that aren't going to work. So, we've all been there where we spend days on something that isn't going to sound good. So,
do you feel that it's better to actually delete it completely, or like versus like archiving it for like later on, maybe you need something else from the project, or like do you find it's easier for you to like just strike a line and like, okay, that's gone?
my recommendation to others is probably don't delete it. But for me, I find it easier to delete it for just my mindset is like, there might be moments where I'll take the drums, or I'll take something I like. I might take a little vocal hit that sounds nice or something. But generally, I like to start on a clean slate every time, other than use my template really, just because what I started to notice was all my music was sounding the same. Like every time, it's like this is all starting to repeat itself a little bit, which can be great when you're writing EPs because you want cohesion between the tracks. But if you're finding yourself starting to sound really identical all the time, then that might be the reason. So it sometimes is nicer just to start from scratch. But I would recommend to newer producers to not delete things, just save it, like keep it on your hard drive and maybe visit it down the line slightly.
What sort of tools or software, like
Mm.
plugins or stuff like that, have you
Mm.
continued using over the years? Like, if you can give us like three sort of plugins that you think, okay, these things are always staying in my template.
Um, so let's talk about samples first, because I think it's Splice versus Loop Cloud, that kind of stuff. Loop Cloud is essential for many reasons. I think not just so that you can still take loops, sorry, and throw them into your projects, but I use it as my Ableton sample browser now. So for me, it analyzes my entire collection and tells me the category of the sound and the key it's in. That is a game changer for me because Ableton doesn't do that. Ableton doesn't. All it has is file names and previews, whereas this will literally categorize the key and the type of sound. So that is a win-win already. And also, LoopCloud has so many other perks, like you can build ideas through it. So I would recommend LoopCloud to absolutely anybody, even if you're just using it as a browser.
And that does
Um,
it, and it does it automatically. Like you don't have
yeah.
to like categorize. Okay.
No, it analyzes it using AI and tells you what it is. So it's amazing. So I use Loop Cloud. So I'm a huge fan of the Arturia collection. I think that's an amazing an amazing set of synths, including the Analogs Lab stuff as well, which is like the bundle of all the sounds, a bit like Zenology is for Rolling Cloud. So I love Arturia products. I think they're amazing. I prefer them to Rolling Cloud because I think Rolling Cloud is so buggy and slow and
I think
archaic
it
when it
takes
comes
a
to like.
lot more CPU, no? I think.
It does. It really does. So analog, just the analog sound stuff. Like for bass lines, the DX7 is just such a cool synth. So all the the Fab Filter bits as well, like the Pro Q3 or 4, if you've got 4 now, that you just can't work without those. I feel like the Ableton EQ is just so rubbish
I
in
just use it as a
comparison.
filter, basically. I just filter anything
Exactly.
with that, and then
Mm.
whatever stuff it has to be more precise, I just put the Pro Q.
It's a nice
Just
shortcut, isn't it? Just for filtering, like you say. So I think the Pro Q stuff is amazing. Anything Fab Filter is just up there. And then yeah, I think try not to get too. My advice is always try not to always look for plugins. Try and Ableton's got everything you need. Try and be careful not to just get sold the dream with all the marketing ploys and stuff, and you're suddenly going to become Chris Dussy if you buy the Fab Filter Pro Q 3 or whatever. So I think these things can help you, but try and keep it minimum. Like try and buy as little as you can and explore what you've got versus mass buying of plugins all the time, which people do. Yeah, I see it all the time.
do you ever get days where you're like, you get up and you're like,
Mm.
today I really don't feel like inspired. I really
Oh,
don't want to sit in
massively.
front of
Mm.
the laptop,
Hmm.
computer. Like I don't want to open Ableton at all. What do you do on those days? Like what are your like tools to manage
Well,
that?
I think it's really important to give yourself a break and spend time doing other things. If it's not working, don't fight it. Try and make stuff into a habit. Try and do things. I always try and encourage my clients to spend, an hour or so every morning just messing around and try and chop your week up into different sort of objectives. So Monday could be a day of sample hunting. Tuesday could be a day of creating an idea. Wednesday could be working on an arrangement. Thursday could be a mix day. Friday could be final tweaks and mastering and stuff. Um, Try and split your days up into chunks so that you know what you're doing and you've got a plan. And if it's not working, it doesn't matter. It's not, it doesn't. I really encourage you to just not fight it. Spend time, go for a walk, go for a run, do some exercise, have some time out. There's no point fighting creativity because you're just going to hate it, and we all want to enjoy this, not hate it really, this process. So yeah,
So you're saying that if like for example someone like I'm gonna take me as an
mm,
example because I couldn't follow that schedule because
no,
it's just too much of a limit to me to just do one thing one day. And
mm,
because
mm,
sometimes I try doing that and then I have something else that comes in like as an idea, and then I'm like,
mhm.
no, like I have to stay on this while I have this great idea. It feels like sort of like a punishment to
Yeah, of
me. So like
course.
are you saying that people should try different methods but then find what comes more natural to them because you're
Yeah, I
not
mean,
fighting yourself in that case.
no, I mean, nothing is set in stone. Every personality has a different way of working. You can't just do, if I say do it like that, it may not work for you, and that's absolutely fine. You've got to find what works for the personalities, for the different sort of brain types and stuff, if that's the right way of explaining it. But I feel like everyone likes to do things slightly differently. But I think, yeah, just try and find what works for you. Some people like to plan and schedule and, really fix their production routines, and some people like to be a bit more free with the concept and make music how they want to, which is totally cool. Do whatever works best for you. But I think try different things. Absolutely try different things, and have a break. Like, don't be afraid to have breaks. Last year, I probably only spent um, a couple of days a month making music, I'd say.
Hmm.
Throughout the entire year, I was really slow because of the super serious side of things. So I was a bit kind of, after all the sessions, I'd be a bit burnt out to work on my own stuff. So I gave myself a lot of space, and like we were saying earlier, I've released a lot over the years now, so I don't really need to keep doing it all the time, so I can just do it as and when I feel like. It's become more of a, for me personally, in becoming a dad and stuff, it's become more of a sort of, I release when I'm ready to, rather than feeling like I've got to constantly put music out all the time.
I really want to get into that topic of becoming a dad, but before we get into that, I'm
Mm,
wondering just to stay a bit more on the topic of music and, before we
mm,
get into like how to balance everything. I wonder, social media is a big thing nowadays.
yeah.
How do you manage your social media presence and sort of like engage with your audience? Because you're not just a like production coach, you're also an artist. Like
Hmm.
you have to sort of like show what you're doing somehow.
Sure,
And
sure.
yeah, how what do you do? What do you try and like put out there, basically?
So, so I think from an artist perspective, I'm probably a terrible person to talk to about this because my artist socials have been pretty bad, pretty poor. It's not. I'm not a very good social media artist. I tend to I just don't enjoy the process too much. Like I don't really enjoy the sort of constantly having to think of new ways to be interesting online. I'd much rather just put my music up there and just say when it's out there. But but this is not the right the right way to do things. It's incredibly important to have a social presence, show your life, show what you're getting up to. I mean, I've got so many examples in my head of amazing people that do it brilliantly, like Josh Baker, Coulter, Luke Van Dijk. Those guys do present themselves in a really great way online, and the way that they do it, Josh Baker with his running, that, showing you as a person rather than just a musician or an artist. I think it's like showing your life. I I think that's absolutely the right way to do things. So I'd really encourage people to just open up their fans to their lives, so that it becomes a bit more personable and relatable. But super serious, that's another beast where I really do focus a lot of my attention social media wise, and that's where I spend a lot of time doing reels and Ableton tips and stuff. That's definitely been a reason why my personal Instagram has suffered, is because all my energy goes into growing the business of Super Serious, really. So I'm really keen on just getting tips out there to the community as much as I can, and just really pushing that side of it. So me, Danny, Ben, and Gert. And Ryan are really just on it all the time, just trying to show people how we can help them in Ableton and show them shortcuts. But social media is integral now. It's something we've all got to embrace and get on with, and crack on with. It just isn't something that I particularly focus on as an artist, at my own detriment, because it's not, I'm not out there all the time. I'm not playing all the time. I know that. And that's something that I've absolutely accepted. And I'm very happy kind of where I am at the moment, because my focus is in slightly different areas, basically.
When you create the content for Super Serious,
Mm.
do you just basically have the screen recording on? You just go and do things. Do you have like a plan how you create the content, or like is it
Yeah.
more like, okay, I'll just record like for half an hour and then I'll chop up whatever is good? How does it work?
No, so what I tend to do is I use Apple sort of notes and reminders and stuff, and make a list of what I'm going to record, and then I'll go into my existing projects and I will just screen record, but a specific thing that I'm doing. So I will just freestyle into the mic of, like, just talk about the script of what I'm doing, and then that's it, and then throw it into captions, get the captions on there, and spit it out and throw it onto the SSC Instagram, and for example, I did one yesterday on taking amazing loops from, Sample Market and things like that, throwing them into a drum rack, and it takes, from drum loops, it will take the MIDI and just give you the same swing and groove as the loop. And so that's just something I did yesterday, and I purposefully sat there and recorded it. So I do tend to plan those things. I don't like sort of have the camera running and chop it up.
How do you
Um,
feel about the effort that goes into social media and the return that we get from it?
that's an interesting one. I find it really uh, hard. It's um it's a huge. I know for a fact that, like, all of us, when I talk about, when I say all of us, like me, Ben, Dan, Brian, Gert, um, Danny, sorry, we hate doing the reels. We all hate it. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, we know we've got to do it, and we know it's important, because it's a way of us reaching audiences and people that care about this stuff and helping them. But we hate we don't. It's not. It's a hard job. Um,
It's a
and you've
full-time
got
job. I mean, it's a separate full-time job doing that.
it is. It really is. It really is. I don't know how you find it, but yeah, I struggle with. But we just know it's part of life now, and it's what we've got to do. So we force ourselves.
And then there's also, because that's just a recording of it. And then there's the
Hmm.
editing. Do you have someone that focuses just on the editing, or is it just you guys chopping up things in like a
Pretty much me, mate. Pretty much me.
okay.
I go in and do little tidy ups and stuff where I can. Apart from with Gert, Gert's a full time videographer as well, so he's very like on it. So Gert tends to deliver me edited reels, whereas the others, I've always said to the other guys like, don't worry, I'll do it. But because Gert is so good at it, I've kind of left it to him. But that's Lenoir's for anyone who's interested. But yeah, I do have to do that too, which also adds further time. So a whole single reel will often take a couple of hours, really, start to finish, to get done. And some of them just don't really do anything for your socials, and it's kind of hit and
It's
miss. And
crazy.
yeah, we have to deal with lots of algorithm changes and uh, landscape changes, like new platforms that pop up left, right, and center. And TikTok being banned the other day, everyone's like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" And actually,
Yeah.
spend ages building up your audience on there, and suddenly it's gone, and it's like, "Oh, great, what a
Yeah,
waste of time."
panic for 24 hours as well, and then it's
Mm.
back in there.
Yeah,
And now we don't
it
know if
was
it's going to
always
go or not.
it was always going to come back, wasn't it? But yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, and it's a real grind. So I do really encourage people to spend as much time learning about that, as well as being a producer, as well as learning Ableton. You've got to be a bit of a genius at everything now to stand out.
You have to
Um,
be like a multi-versed like entrepreneur basically, because you also need to negotiate, you also need to like
mhm,
communicate well with labels and all that. And actually,
mhm,
that brings me to the next question, because social media is not only the only new challenge that changed in the last like what 20, 30 years. What other challenges have you like faced in the last few years that
mm.
maybe earlier you didn't have to face?
Um, So I think obviously COVID was a big thing, wasn't it, for a lot of artists? That was tricky. Becoming, just staying at home, being a bit more insular with everything. I think one of the biggest things that I've struggled with over the years is working in different environments and being comfortable in those environments in terms of like mixing, being able to really trust your room that you're in. Because I've moved house a couple of times, I've been in different rooms and stuff. I think that's definitely been one of the hardest things for me is learning to properly mix down in an environment that you enjoy and being in a room that you feel settled in. Um, and I've moved, I've got a wonderful home and I love it to bits, but the room that I work in is very challenging mix wise. So I'm pretty much using headphones permanently at the moment. Which is a real barrier. It's definitely been tricky to kind of get around that, but I've by using other ears from friends and stuff, you can get around that, and also learning to use your tools. I know some of the best artists in the world are mixing on headphones. It's doable. It's just you have to learn how to do it. And it does involve some fine tuning. I think also oversaturation of the scene, like that's definitely been another interesting challenge that I think all artists face now is that for every one gig there's 10,000 DJs that want it as well. How do you how do you become that one person every time that gets that gig? So, the sort of comparisons, they're like, oh God, that person's flying and I'm not getting a single booking. All of those things are things that I faced over the years and struggled with mentally. But I think you learn as you get older, and I feel that I am getting older now. I've sort of lost that sort of comparison now, and I don't worry too much about it. But it's definitely a barrier that I've faced.
How about navigating the industry, as in like to network to like, I mean,
Hmm.
obviously you've had quite the discography already, but
Mm.
for example, in terms of like gigging or like, because promoters are coming and going, and now like
Hmm.
there's only a few big ones left, and they're sort of like not dominating in a bad way, but you do see the big names almost everywhere because everything
Yeah.
has like internationalized, let's say.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with like navigating the industry and like getting to know people, networking, maybe even like sell yourself as an artist to like a potential promoter? What has
Well,
changed?
well, I think it's really important that you attend events and build relationships with people. You know, the more there are so many artists out there that have become artists on labels or label parties or whatever through just attending those parties over and over again and getting to know the residents, getting to know the owners of the party and stuff. So much of it comes from attendance and being there and being on the tips of people's tongues at these parties who run them and own them. So I think that is essential. It's very hard to um, become part of a brand and a label and a party if you're not there, if you're not attending, then and just sending cold demos, then I think it's so much harder. So for me, it's so essential that you're attending these things and being at these events.
Because
And
otherwise you're not showing your face, so nobody can put
you're not
a
no.
face to the music.
Exactly. That's so it's so important. I think also, going back to basics and actually just being, when you are getting in touch with promoters and things like that, is just being a really nice person, being a decent human being. I think there are lots of people that just don't have, not lots of people, certainly the wrong way of describing it. There are people out there that just have the wrong, I think personally, like just don't, lack the manners to really
Hmm.
build connections with promoters, kind of just the expectation that they should be on a lineup versus wanting it, because some people do expect to be in places and they it's just not the reality. So I think just attending, being kind, being decent, having manners, all of those things really matter to promoters. But also you've also got to be making good tracks, and you've got to consistently be releasing on strong labels. And I think that's where crews are important. I really don't like using that term, but I feel like um, crews or brands or labels, like groups of guys collectively working for the same goal. So if you look at like Next Up, where you've got Lockie and Max and Luke Dean, though, and Mad again, those guys are like best mates, all hunting for the same thing. And Next Up, the brand is just exploding, isn't it? So you sort of see those guys doing that. Fuse as well. Back in the day, I think there are um, very few labels and crews where the bond was just so amazing and like it resonated to everyone. And that's why, I mean, Fuse is just the most insane label. We all, Archie, Seb, Rich Next, Enzo, um like that was just so massive for everybody during that period. And they are, I think, the perfect example of such a strong group of guys all wanting the same thing but then delivering with music. um so yeah, I think those things are important now.
And
um
you're building that as well a bit with Super Serious because now you have a team around you.
mm,
Is like let's talk a bit about maybe the beginnings of Super Serious because I'm
mm.
very curious what inspired you to actually start that.
Well, so I was part of a few communities. I loved uh, I loved, I think it was Studio Orbit I was part of, but my favourite community of all time forever has been Brothers. Um, I love Brothers, like my biggest inspiration. I don't know why I didn't mention him earlier on, but I love Sammy to bits, and I love being part of his community, and I just really enjoyed watching and learning from his videos. And then I spoke to Camille Darmian from he does Dive and Live.
Hmm.
So Camille as well he was such a hero. He had me on his YouTube channel a couple of times, and I actually really found myself enjoying talking about stuff, talking about my music and talking about projects. And then I was like, hold on a sec, I'm enjoying this too much actually. Maybe I need to start thinking about it. And then I had a few inquiries from people just saying, do you ever do lessons, because they saw those videos. And I was like, I'm just going to put a punt out there and go for it. And did, and then yeah, now Super Serious is doing brilliant. We've got over 100 members and a flourishing community of people, and I couldn't be lucky to have such a great team helping me sort of get to where we are, really, because the team is amazing. Um,
And oh, sorry, go on.
no, that was it. That was it.
I was just wondering because, obviously the work, super serious, making
Mm.
music. How do you manage to like balance all of that? Like, what does a day in your life or a week in your life look like? Tell us a bit about your workflow, as in like your
Yeah,
life workflow.
yeah, sure. So it's a bit random at the moment, because of, I want to try and be the most important thing in my life is obviously the husband and the father-son relationship. I can't, so sort of everything else is movable in my life. Like I want to make sure that, you know, my wife's okay, Milo's okay, so they are the focus. But typically, I will have calls in the morning. So I work with lots of Australians, and some of the UK guys are happy to get up in the morning. So I'd have calls in the morning. Then I do my day job 9 till 6, um, and then I have a bit of time with my son and my wife, and we'll do some dinner. And then I'll tend to do calls in the evening 7 till 10. So I'm doing about 5 hours of calls outside of my day job, and also trying to help around the house where I can. But luckily, I work from home, so I have the ability to dip in and out of other things. Like I can, you know, get a video done if I need to during the day, or I can, on my lunch break, or I can do this and that. So I do have the flexibility, I think, a little bit, because I work from home to achieve these things, if that makes sense.
How
Um,
did? Sorry, go on.
no, no, that's
It's a
that's
bit
it, mate.
delayed. That's why I keep like interrupting you.
No, no, no,
How
don't
did
worry.
I wonder? Because I mean, I'm sort of like in that age where at some point I will have to, think about family as well. So I'm just
Mm,
curious about how your life changed or your artist life changed
mm.
after becoming a dad and how it was before, how was it before versus to now?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing was just time. I sort of didn't have the time anymore to work on music half as much as I used to. So the biggest sacrifice will be time, but it just doesn't, the benefits of having a child just completely outweigh it. So it's not. I think your priorities just move slightly. Um, I think definitely before Milo, my focus was very much around my relationship and music, my wife and music. But as soon as you have a child, it's like, right, that's pretty much like everything. But I did. As I was saying at the beginning, I'm so lucky to have such a supportive partner who kind of really helps me to find time as well. So like, she will help me find time to work on music, and she really helps with Milo with like bath time and all that kind of stuff. Because suddenly that is like, it's breakfast, and all of these things take so long. It's not just 10 minutes. These things are big, big jobs. Bath time, bedtime, it all takes ages. So I'm very lucky to have Joe's support on that. But I think, yeah, really the biggest thing that you'll notice when you have children is probably that your priorities just have to shift slightly, and you just don't have that free time. Suddenly you can't go out in London every weekend, and you've got to pick 4 months in a calendar like down the line, and pick a date and say I'm going out that day, and that's it, and lock it in.
But it does improve your health as well.
Yes, drastically. Like, yeah, drinking is totally dis. I generally don't drink anymore. Because yeah, it's just so much harder when you're quite shattered all the time. Um, so yeah, it does help. It does help in that
Has
sense.
the working out, like doing sport and all that, has that always been part
Mm.
of your life, or has it also started with like becoming a dad?
I've always loved it. I've always really enjoyed football, tennis, things like that. But I'd say the last few years I've definitely been more focused on like running, and just making sure I'm moving more to try and keep as fit as I can. Um, I want to make sure I look after myself so I can look after my son, if that makes sense. So
That makes a
that's
lot
always
of
been really
sense.
It's really important. I don't want to be just a dad that's like sat down watching him while he plays. I want to make sure I'm out there playing with him. So I'm always trying and keep myself as fit as I can. I could definitely do things so much better than I am, but I try my best, basically.
We have talked about your past, about
Mm,
your present, basically. I just wonder what are the three biggest, or like just one, the biggest lesson
mm.
that you've learned or picked up along the way, as like in music or even in life in general.
I think the biggest thing is let me try and think about this. Nobody cares as much as you do about your music. Like nobody listens to your music like you do. So we're always so critical and um, harsh about our own music and negative about our own tracks. Artists tend to be quite negative about their own music, and I think nobody. The biggest thing I've learned is nobody hears it like you do. So it's really important to realize that like a hi hat that's like maybe 2 decibels louder um, is not going to destroy a song in somebody else's eyes. It's not going to be the thing that they hear. And I think over the years, the biggest thing for me is like not caring quite as much about being perfect with everything or trying to be perfect, letting go more and just like sitting back and realizing that nobody cares about that hi-hat that might be panned to the left too hard or that synth might be a bit too bright. Nobody cares about these things, and I think that's something I've really learned over the years, and actually is something I wish I'd known about 10 years ago, because I think I've had quite a few moments in my journey where I've been really depressed about a mix or I've been really depressed about something. And actually it just doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And people hold things back too often because they're afraid of what's going to happen. And actually, if one person likes it, then that's a wonderful victory in my eyes. If one person likes a track you've made, then that's great. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters.
What what are your ultimate goals in life as an artist, as a dad, as a entrepreneur?
Well, so we're currently in the process of building a studio at home.
Hmm.
The super serious studio. So very excited about that happening. So we'll start to do one-to-one sessions there and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to just growing the brand in as many ways as I can and really expanding the platform, partnering with Trackstack on the studio side of things. So I've been working very closely with them to kind of help shape the products, or at least I mean, they've been amazing. Helping me get the platform migrated over from Patreon. So I'm eternally grateful to those guys for all of their hard work and help to do that. But I really just want to keep going with it, just seeing where we can end up. We're going to start a label. We're going to start. I mean, we've had guests on the platform for years, and it would be amazing to eventually make those into podcasts one day. Um, so we'll see, mate. I just want to keep going with it as much as I can, keep trying to help as much as I possibly can. Other artists, really. That's my goal. And hopefully one day my son will will be keen. If he's not, that's fine. I'm absolutely, whatever he wants to do. But I'd love to see him find a passion in electronic music as well, and maybe see where that ends up. So, and I think just for me, my goal is to help as much as I can, and prevent people from making some mistakes I've learned over the years, because I've made thousands, and I just if I can stop people from making those mistakes, then I'll be happy. Um,
If you could
yeah.
give one piece of advice to aspiring DJs, producers, artists, what
Mm.
would that advice be?
Um, don't release on any label. Don't release on just any label. Think about it. Be strategic. Um, Try and build towards a goal label rather than just anyone that will take your music. Really focus on make a bit of a mind map of where you want to be and where you want to end up, and watch what other producers that release on those labels, watch what they're doing. Try and find that common ground and look at those stepping stones, but don't just fire on just releasing on any label, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help. Just because you're excited to get something out there. Um, Focus on self-releasing if you can, rather than just releasing on any label. Self-release it and see what happens. It's much easier than you realize, and the results can be brilliant as well. We've seen many artists in the super serious community who have self-released, and they're hitting 100K likes on Spotify and things like that. So it can be done. So my advice is just be patient and focus on the goal labels. Don't just scattergun releases on crap, basically. It's probably my biggest advice.
I think I couldn't have asked for a better way to end the interview. That was a lovely
Cool.
chat. We're like 54 minutes, so I think that's
Cool.
plenty.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, mate. Thank you, bro.
Dude, thank you so much for taking your time. I really appreciate it
Hey, it's my
because
pleasure.
as you mentioned, like you're a very, very busy man, a busy
Sure.
dad, a busy
Yeah, no
artist.
worries, mate. No worries.
Yeah,
It's been
so
lovely. It's been lovely to talk to you, Dylan. I really appreciate your time too, and thanks, mate.
we finally managed, yeah, to talk
We
a
did
bit
it. We managed
more
it. We managed
loosely.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well,
um,
hopefully the first of many.